The water was colder than I expected. That's the first thing I remember thinking, standing there in the Rio Grande at midnight with my Zoom H6 recorder held above my head. 58 degrees, probably. Cold enough to make my legs ache through the waders I'd borrowed from a guy at the bait shop in town. I was trying to get clean ambient sound. Just the river doing its thing. No cars, no voices, nothing but water moving over rocks in the dark. The kind of background audio that makes a podcast episode feel real, you know? Like you're actually there. I'd done this maybe 20 times before on other projects. Wade into some creek or stand in some abandoned parking lot at 2 a.m, headphones on, recording silence that wasn't really silent. This felt different though. I couldn't shake it. This weird pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with the cold water or the late hour. I'd felt it since I first pitched the La Llorona series to Kinsley 3 weeks ago. She'd loved it immediately. Folklore origins, unsolved deaths, the whole intersection of myth and crime, that was our sweet spot. We'd built a decent following doing deep dives on cold cases with strange angles. Not serial numbers or anything, but enough listeners that I could actually pay my rent most months. The Weeping Woman. That's what La Llorona means. The legend changes depending on who's telling it, but the basics stay the same. A woman drowns her children in a river, then spends eternity wandering the banks, crying and looking for them. Parents along the Rio Grande have been using her to scare kids away from the water for generations. Don't go near the river at night or La Llorona will get you. Standard folklore stuff. Cautionary tale with practical applications. Except when I started the preliminary research, I found something that made my hands go numb. I was in my apartment in Austin, Anthony asleep in his room, laptop open on the kitchen table, with about 15 browser tabs going. I do this thing where I can't stop clicking. One source leads to another, until it's 4 a.m, and I've somehow ended up reading about Victorian funeral photography when I started researching a missing person case from 2003. That night, I was looking at drowning statistics for the Rio Grande, trying to get a sense of how many deaths actually occurred, whether there was any pattern that might have fed into the legend. The Texas Parks and Wildlife database was a mess. Incomplete records, inconsistent reporting. But I found a local news article from Del Rio that mentioned a specific stretch of river near the Amistad Reservoir, 3 miles roughly, between the old Highway 90 bridge and a bend near some private ranch land. The article was about water safety, pretty standard stuff, but it mentioned that 7 children had drowned in that exact area over the past 4 decades, which seemed high for such a specific location. The reporter had interviewed some county official about warning signs and public access points. 7 kids, 40 years. I almost moved on. Probably should have. But I had this feeling, so I started digging into each individual case. Took me 3 days to find them all. Obituaries, police reports I could access through a Freedom of Information request, old newspaper articles on microfilm databases. The details were scattered across decades, different sources, different levels of documentation. First drowning was in 1979. Miguel Herrera, age 6. Second was 1987. Third was 1994. The gaps weren't even. Sometimes 8 years, sometimes 5. Once it was only 3 years between deaths. The most recent was 2017. A boy named Ethan Webb. I made a spreadsheet. That's what I do. I put everything into columns so I can see it all at once. Name, date, age, location details, family information, whatever I could find. That's when I saw it. Every single victim was a boy. That wasn't shocking. Statistically, boys drown more than girls, but every single one was between 5 and 8 years old. That was a narrower range than random chance would suggest, and every single father was in the middle of a custody dispute when his son died. Every single one. Miguel's parents were divorcing. The police report mentioned it in passing, that the father had taken Miguel for a weekend visit. Joshua Brennan's dad had just filed for increased visitation. Ethan Webb's father had primary custody, but the mother was fighting it in court. 7 drownings, 7 custody battles, 7 single fathers who lost their sons in the same 3-mile stretch of river. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at my laptop screen, and I couldn't breathe right. The first week I spent down in Del Rio doing groundwork. I drove the 5 hours from Austin on a Monday morning. Anthony with Ellen for her week. The town sits right on the border, about 40,000 people, split pretty evenly between Anglo and Hispanic families. It's got that border town feel, 2 languages happening simultaneously, border patrol vehicles parked outside the HEB, hot as hell even in October. I started with the locals. That's always the move. You can read articles and police reports all day, but people who actually live somewhere know things that never make it into official records. I talked to a waitress at the Dairy Queen who'd lived there her whole life. She remembered 2 of the drownings. Terrible tragedies, she said. Shook her head a lot. I talked to a guy who ran a river tour company. He knew the exact bend I was asking about. Said the current there was tricky, but not unusually dangerous. I talked to a priest at San Felipe Catholic Church who'd done funeral services for 3 of the boys over the years. Nobody connected them. Why would they? 40 years, 7 deaths, different families. Sad coincidences in a town where the river was part of daily life. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found, not yet. I wanted to be sure first. The county library was in a low brick building off Main Street, next to the courthouse. Small place, probably hadn't been updated since the 90s. Fluorescent lights that buzzed a little, that specific library smell of old paper and industrial carpet cleaner. Morgan Luna worked the reference desk, late 50s, cat-eye glasses on a beaded chain, cardigan even though it was 80 degrees outside. She had that librarian energy, calm, organized, genuinely happy when someone asked for help with research. I'm working on a project about local history, I told her, which was true, technically. Specifically incidents along the Rio Grande going back to the late 70s. I was hoping you might have newspaper archives. Her whole face lit up. We have microfilm going back to 1962, she said. The Del Rio News Herald. Some gaps in the early years, but fairly complete after 1975. She showed me to a back room with 2 microfilm readers that looked older than me. Big clunky machines, the kind where you thread the film through manually and turn a handle to scroll. She brought me boxes of film organized by year, explained the system, asked if I needed help with anything specific. Just browsing for now, I said, trying to get a feel for the area during different time periods. I wasn't ready to tell her what I was really looking for. Didn't want to explain about the podcast, about La Llorona, about 7 dead boys whose fathers had all been fighting for custody. Morgan checked on me a few times that first afternoon, brought me water, showed me how to fix the focus when the text got blurry. Patient, helpful, the kind of person who actually cares about preserving local history. I found the first article around 4 in the afternoon. September 1979, front page of the local section. Boy, 6, drowns in Rio Grande. The microfilm made everything slightly fuzzy, white text on black background, my eyes starting to hurt from staring at the screen. But I read every word. Miguel Herrera had been with his father for a court-mandated weekend visit. They'd gone to the river in the evening. The father said he'd turned his back for just a minute. By the time he noticed Miguel was gone, it was too late. I scrolled through the next few days of coverage. The search, the recovery, the funeral. A follow-up article mentioned that Miguel's mother was estranged from the father, that there had been ongoing custody proceedings. I found the second case, the third, the fourth. Each drowning happened between September and November. Each child was between 5 and 8 years old. Each father had been fighting for custody when his son died. The pattern was undeniable. I sat there in that back room of the Del Rio County Library, the microfilm reader humming next to me, and I knew I'd stumbled onto something that went way beyond ordinary folklore. I went back to the river every night that week. Same spot, same time. 11:30 or midnight, depending on when I could get away from the motel without the guy at the front desk giving me weird looks. The Starlight Inn off Highway 90. $49 a night, clean enough, parking lot half empty. I'd leave my truck there and walk the quarter-mile down to the access point I'd found during the day. The routine was pretty simple. Set up the Zoom H6 on the small Manfrotto tripod I kept in my field kit, point it toward the water, hit record. Then just stand there for 20 minutes, maybe 30, trying not to move or breathe too loud. I wanted clean ambient sound, water over rocks, wind through the mesquite and cottonwood along the bank. Maybe an owl if I got lucky. Something atmospheric for the intro, something that would set the mood before I got into the actual cases. That's what I told myself I was doing anyway. The first 2 nights I got decent recordings. River sounds. Some rustling from wildlife I couldn't see. A truck passing on the highway in the distance, which I'd have to edit out. On the second night, I brought my digital thermometer, the one I used for Anthony's camping trips, because I wanted to note the temperature for my production notes. Kinsley liked details like that. Recorded at the Rio Grande, Del Rio, Texas, November 8th. Ambient temperature 54 degrees. That kind of thing. The third night was a Tuesday. Anthony had called earlier from Ellen's place, told me about his spelling test. 10 out of 10. I told him I was proud of him, asked what he wanted for dinner when I picked him up on Friday. Pizza, obviously. That was always the answer. I got to the riverbank around 11:45. Temperature that night was 56 degrees when I first checked. Cool but not cold. I was wearing my Carhartt jacket over a thermal shirt, and I felt fine. Comfortable even. Set up took maybe 5 minutes. I found a flat spot for the tripod about 10 feet from the water's edge, made sure the recorder was level, did a quick sound check with my headphones. Levels looked good. I hit record and then moved back a little, stood still, kept quiet. The water sounded different that night. I noticed it right away, but couldn't figure out what had changed. Same river, same stretch. But there was something underneath the regular flow. A kind of rhythm I hadn't caught before. Probably just my imagination. Probably just me listening too hard. I stood there for 23 minutes, checked my watch twice. Didn't hear anything unusual while I was recording. Just water and wind and my own breathing that I tried to keep shallow and quiet. When I got back to the motel, it was almost 12:30. I didn't listen to the recording right away. I was tired. Drove 5 hours that morning from Austin. After dropping Anthony at Ellen's, spent the afternoon at the library again with Morgan and her microfilm readers. Grabbed dinner at a Whataburger, then the river. I figured I'd review the audio in the morning when my ears were fresher. But I couldn't sleep. That happens sometimes when I'm deep in a project. My brain won't shut off. So around 2 a.m. I gave up, made terrible coffee with the Mr. Coffee machine on the bathroom counter, and pulled out my laptop. I imported the recording and opened it in Audacity. Put my headphones on. Hit play. The first 12 minutes were exactly what I expected. Water sounds, some wind, a dog barking somewhere far off. I was already thinking about which sections I could use, where I might layer in some narration. Then at the 13-minute mark, I heard it. Sobbing. Distant, but clear. A woman crying. Not just crying, anguished. The kind of sound that comes from somewhere deep and broken. I stopped the playback, sat there for a second. Rewind, 30 seconds. Played it again. Still there. Clearer the second time, actually. Definitely female. Definitely crying. The sound rose and fell, moved in and out of the foreground like she was walking or pacing. Hard to tell. The thing was, I hadn't heard that while I was standing there, not even a hint of it. I'd been 10 feet from the recorder. If there'd been a woman crying somewhere nearby, close enough for the zoom to pick up, I would have heard her. The H6 is a good recorder, but it's not magic. It can't pull sound from miles away. I checked the waveform. The sobbing lasted about 90 seconds, then faded out. After that, just normal river sounds again. I played the whole recording 3 more times. Headphones cranked up. The sobbing was there every time. Same spot, same duration. I hadn't imagined it. Then I remembered the thermometer. I'd left it running that night, sitting on a rock near the tripod. I did that sometimes. Took temperature readings every few minutes during a session, so I could note any significant changes. Probably overkill, but that's me. I like data. I pulled up the notes I'd typed into my phone. Started at 56 degrees, 56 at the 5-minute mark, 55 at 10 minutes. At 13 minutes, right when the sobbing started on the recording, the temperature had dropped to 41 degrees, 15-degree drop in 3 minutes. At 18 minutes, back up to 54. I hadn't felt that. Hadn't felt cold at all. I remembered standing there in my jacket, comfortable, thinking the night was actually pretty mild for November. I sat in that motel room with my terrible coffee going cold and stared at my laptop screen until the sun came up. Didn't sleep, didn't really try. Colin Ramsey found me at the library on Thursday afternoon. I was back in the microfilm room with Morgan's help, going through 1987 coverage. Looking for the second drowning. I'd found a brief mention in an October issue. Boy found in the river. Investigation ongoing. But I was searching for follow-up articles when Colin appeared in the doorway. He was maybe 70, 75. Stocky build, weathered face, cowboy hat that looked older than me. He stood there not saying anything for a solid 10 seconds, just looking at me. "You the one asking about the river?" he finally said. Not a question. "Yeah," I said. "Calvin Shepherd." "Colin Ramsey." He didn't offer his hand. "Heard you've been talking to people, asking about drownings." Word travels fast in small towns. I'd figured that out already. "I'm researching for a podcast, true crime and folklore. The drownings caught my attention because Crystal wants to meet you." That stopped me. "Crystal?" "Crystal Lopez. Lost her grandson in '87. Colin's expression didn't change. "Heard you were looking into it. She don't talk to many people, but she'll talk to you, if you're serious." "I'm serious." "You better be." He pulled a piece of paper from his shirt pocket, unfolded it. "Here's her address. She'll be home tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't be late, and don't waste her time." He set the paper on the table next to my laptop and left. Morgan appeared about 30 seconds later. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I just got my first real interview." Crystal Lopez lived in a small house on Cantu Street, east side of Del Rio. 1 story, white paint going grey, chain link fence around a yard that was mostly dirt and some struggling mesquite. I pulled up at 1:58 p.m. on Friday, sat in my truck for a minute, checked my recorder batteries, made sure I had backup SD cards. Colin was sitting on the porch, same hat, different shirt. He watched me walk up the front path and didn't smile. "She's inside," he said. "Be respectful." "Of course. I mean it. She's been through enough. Every few years somebody shows up asking questions, making promises. Then they leave and nothing changes." He stood up. "You gonna be different?" "I'm going to try." He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Okay then." The inside of the house was dim and cool. Heavy curtains, furniture that looked like it hadn't moved in decades, everything clean but worn. There were photographs on every surface, frames on the side tables, the mantel, the walls. Most of them showed the same boy at different ages, dark hair, gap-toothed smile. Crystal sat in an armchair near the window. Tiny woman, maybe 5'2", white hair down past her shoulders. She wore all black. Long dress, shawl over her shoulders. Her hands were folded in her lap and they shook slightly. Arthritis, probably. "Mrs. Lopez," I said. "Thank you for meeting with me. I'm Calvin Shepherd. Sit." Her voice was quiet, heavily accented. She gestured to the couch across from her chair. I sat. Colin stayed standing near the door. "You want to know about Cole?" she said. "Yes, ma'am, if you're willing to talk about it." She looked at the photographs on the mantel. The boy's face, over and over. Everyone forgets. Police, they say it was an accident. Just a boy who drowned. These things happen, but they don't forget. The mothers don't forget. "No, ma'am. Cole was 7 years old. My son, Zachary, he was fighting with his wife. Divorce, custody. Very angry, both of them. The court, they said Zachary could have Cole for the weekend, October weekend. Cool weather, nice for fishing." She paused. "Zachary took him to the river, the same place where you have been going at night." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone where I'd been recording. Not specifically. Crystal smiled a little. Sad smile. Colin sees things. He told me a man goes to the river with equipment, late at night. Same place where the boys died. "I've been recording ambient sound," I said, "for the podcast." "You heard her?" Not a question. I didn't answer right away. Colin shifted his weight by the door. "Yeah," I finally said. "I think I did." Crystal nodded. "She cries for them, all of them, every boy who died in her river." She reached down beside her chair and picked up a manila envelope. Old, creased, the kind with a string clasp. "The police, they did autopsy. They said Cole drowned. Accident. But they never explained this." She opened the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out photographs, set them on the coffee table between us. I leaned forward. They were autopsy photos, black and white, slightly faded, a small boy's body on a steel table. His eyes were closed. He looked like he was sleeping, except for the waxy quality of his skin. "Look at his wrists," Crystal said. I looked. Dark bruises circled both wrists. Perfect rings, like someone had gripped him hard, very hard. You could almost see the finger marks. The coroner, he said these were from the rocks, from the current pushing him against the rocks. Crystal's voice was steady, but her hands kept shaking. "But I know what hands look like on skin. I raised 4 children, I know." I stared at the photographs. The bruise patterns were too clear, too symmetrical. Both wrists, same placement, same pressure, like someone had held him under. "Did the police investigate?" I asked. "They asked questions. They talked to Zachary. He said Cole was playing near the water. He turned around for 1 minute. Cole was gone. They believed him. Case closed." She pulled the photographs back toward her. "But Zachary, he never recovered. He knows something happened. He won't say what, but he knows." "Where is he now?" "Still here, in Del Rio. He don't leave the house much. Don't talk to nobody." She looked at me. "You can try, but he won't talk about Cole. Not ever." I sat back on the couch, thought about the recording, the sobbing, the temperature drop I hadn't felt. "Mrs. Lopez," I said, "were there other boys before Cole?" "One that I know of, 79, Miguel Herrera, same river, same place." She folded her hands over the envelope. "And others after. I keep track. The newspaper, they don't connect them. But the mothers, we know." Colin spoke from the doorway. "You gonna tell this story, right?" "I'm gonna try," I said. Crystal looked at me for a long moment. Then she slid the envelope across the table. "Take them," she said. "Show people what they did not want to see." I picked up the envelope. The photographs inside felt heavier than they should. I went back Saturday night, then Sunday, then Monday. Same routine each time. Leave the Starlight at 11:30, walk the 1/4 mile to the access point, set up the Manfrotto with the H6, hit record, stand there for 20 to 30 minutes. Back to the motel by 1 a.m., import the files into Audacity, listen with my studio headphones. The crying got louder every single night. Saturday's recording had the sobbing starting at 9 minutes instead of 13. Still that same anguished sound, that rising and falling pattern, but clearer this time. I could hear the texture of it better, the wet catch in the throat between sobs, the way the pitch would drop and then spike again. 90 seconds, then fade. Sunday night it started at 6 minutes. 2 full minutes of crying, and I swear I could almost hear syllables in there. Not words exactly, but the shape of them, the way a voice forms around grief. Monday night, last night, it started at 4 minutes, lasted nearly 3 minutes, and this time I heard it. One word, clear as anything. Mijo, my son. I played that section maybe 40 times between 2 and 5 a.m., adjusting the EQ, isolating frequencies, boosting the mid-range where human voice sits. Every time I heard it. Mijo, drawn out and broken, like the word itself was drowning. I should have called Kinsley right then, should have sent her the files, gotten her technical opinion on whether this was some kind of audio artifact or equipment malfunction or, I don't know, something explainable. Instead, I made more coffee and started going through the autopsy photos Crystal had given me. I'd looked at them maybe 6 times since Friday. Cole Lopez, age 7, laid out on a metal table in those harsh morgue lights. The bruises around his wrists were even clearer in the photos than I'd thought when Crystal first showed them to me. Perfect circles, 4 marks on each wrist where fingers would press. The coroner's report, Crystal had included a copy, attributed them to impact with rocks and debris during submersion, consistent with struggle against current. But I'd done river safety training for a feature I produced 3 years ago about kayaking accidents. I'd seen actual drowning documentation. Bodies that got battered by rocks don't bruise in neat finger-width intervals. I pulled up my spreadsheet. 7 deaths total, 1979 through 2017. I'd confirmed 5 of them through newspaper archives and public records. Miguel Herrera, 1979. Cole Lopez, 1987. Joshua Brennan, 1994. 2 others in 2003 and 2011 that I'd found brief mentions of, but hadn't tracked down full details yet. Ethan Webb, 2017. Every father in a custody dispute. Every boy between 5 and 8. Every drowning at the same 3-mile stretch. I'd been treating this like an investigation, like journalism. Find the pattern, document the evidence, build the story, produce the episodes. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. But somewhere around dawn on Tuesday, drinking my 4th cup of coffee in the starlight scratchy desk chair with Cole's autopsy photos on one side of my laptop and the audio waveform on the other, something shifted in my chest. This feeling like cold water seeping in. I opened a new browser tab and pulled up the divorce decree. Just the PDF I kept in my documents folder, the one I hadn't looked at since I signed it 8 months ago. Finalized February 19th. Joint custody with a primary residence determination still pending. That's the legal phrase Ellen's lawyer kept using. Primary residence determination. Sounds so much cleaner than custody battle. We had a hearing scheduled for March 27th, 3 weeks away. Ellen wanted to move Anthony to Houston where her sister lives. Wanted to enroll him in some private school there. Wanted me to have alternating weekends and 1 month in summer. I'd filed a counterclaim for primary custody to stay in Austin. My lawyer said I had a decent shot. I'm the one who does Anthony's homework with him, makes his lunches, takes him camping. Ellen works 60-hour weeks at the firm. But it was getting hostile. That's the word my lawyer used last week. Your ex-wife's attorney is taking an increasingly hostile approach. Ellen had started documenting everything. Every time I returned Anthony 15 minutes late. Every instance where he came back saying we'd eaten McDonald's for dinner. She'd requested my financial records twice, trying to prove the podcast income was too unstable for primary custody. I sat there staring at the decree. 6-year-old son? Custody dispute? Father. No, I said out loud to the empty motel room, but my hands were shaking when I closed the laptop. I tried to sleep. Couldn't. Lay on top of the bedspread fully clothed, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, listening to Highway 90 traffic. Every semi that passed made the window rattle in its frame. I picked up my phone maybe 6 times to call Kinsley. Tell her I needed to pause production, come back to Austin, take a break from the research. My thumb hovered over her contact each time. I didn't call. Because that's ridiculous, right? I'm investigating a pattern of suspicious deaths connected to local folklore. That's the story. I'm documenting evidence. The fact that I happen to also be a divorced father in a custody dispute it's coincidence. Correlation without causation. I've done enough data journalism to know you can find patterns anywhere if you look hard enough. Except the crying was getting louder each night. Except I hadn't heard it while standing there, but the recorder caught it perfectly. Except Crystal's face when she told me she cries for them, all of them, every boy who died in her river. I got up around 9 a.m. Tuesday and drove to Dairy Queen. Ate breakfast tacos I didn't taste, drank more coffee, went back to the library. Morgan smiled when I walked in. "You're here early today." "Yeah," I said. "Trying to wrap up some research." "Finding everything you need?" "More than I expected, actually." She led me back to the microfilm room. I spent 6 hours going through 2003 and 2011, found the articles I needed. Another drowning in October 2003. Marcus Ruiz, age 6, father recently separated and fighting for visitation rights. Another in November 2011, Daniel Ochoa, age 7. Father had filed for increased custody 2 weeks before. Same location, same pattern, same story. I made notes in my spreadsheet, added the details. Time of death, custody status, distance from Highway 90 bridge, everything lined up. My phone buzzed around 3 p.m. Text from Ellen. "Anthony has a dentist appointment Friday at 2. You need to pick him up from school at 1:30. I stared at the message. Friday was supposed to be my day anyway. I got him after school Fridays through Sunday evenings. But Ellen had started doing this thing where she'd schedule appointments during my time, then make it sound like she was doing me a favor by telling me about them. I typed back, "That's my custody day. You should have checked with me before scheduling." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "He needs a cleaning. I'm trying to be responsible. But if you'd rather fight about this too." I put the phone face down on the table. Morgan knocked on the doorframe. "You okay? You need anything?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just long day." She nodded, but her expression said she didn't quite believe me. "Holler if you need help finding anything." I kept working until the library closed at 6. Drove back to the Starlight, sat in the truck in the parking lot for maybe 20 minutes, watching the sun set behind the motel's buzzing neon sign. I knew I was going back to the river tonight. I'd already decided. Needed one more recording, something even clearer than Monday's. Something I could actually use in the podcast, something that would make this whole trip worthwhile. That's what I told myself anyway. 11:30 p.m., I was walking the quarter mile to the access point. Temperature was 53 degrees. No moon, just starlight and the distant glow from Del Rio. I set up the Manfrotto, mounted the H6, did my sound check, hit record at 11:42. The crying started at 90 seconds. Not 13 minutes, not 4 minutes, 90 seconds. And this time I heard it. Not through the headphones later, not in Audacity with the levels adjusted. Right there, standing 10 feet from the recorder. A woman's voice sobbing. That same rising and falling pattern, but so close it could have been right next to me. "Mijo, mi niño, mijo, my son, my boy." The temperature dropped. I felt it this time, the cold coming up from the water, spreading across the bank, wrapping around my chest. My breath came out in a visible cloud. The sobbing got louder, and I swear I felt something behind me. Not heard. Felt. The way you know someone's watching even when you can't see them. I didn't turn around, just stood there, frozen, listening to this woman cry for her son while the temperature kept dropping and my H6 kept recording, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. The crying lasted 4 minutes, then stopped, just cut off mid-sob. The temperature climbed back to normal in maybe 30 seconds. I stood there another 10 minutes, didn't move, barely breathed. Then I packed up my equipment and walked back to the motel, and the whole time I kept thinking about Anthony, about his spelling test, about pizza on Friday, about the way he holds my hand when we cross parking lots, even though he's 6 and thinks he's too old for that. I imported the file at 1 a.m. The crying was there, clear as anything, 5 times louder than Monday's recording. Miho repeated maybe 15 times, and underneath it, barely audible even with the gain pushed up, something else, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was clear. Someone speaking low and fast, like a prayer or a chant. I called Kinsley. I know I said I didn't call anyone, but that's not exactly true. I called her at 1:47 a.m., let it ring 4 times, then hung up before she could answer. Because what was I going to say? I'm chasing a ghost story, and I fit the victim profile? I've recorded unexplained crying that's getting closer each night. I'm a divorced father, investigating dead boys whose fathers were all divorced. She'd tell me to come home. Obviously. She'd say I was too close to this story, that I needed distance, that we could find a different angle, or a different series entirely. And she'd be right. But I didn't go home. I went back Wednesday night, and Thursday, and Friday. Each time the crying started earlier in the recording. Each time I heard it standing there, not just in playback. Each time the whispering underneath got a little clearer. Friday night, I finally made out a few words in the whisper. Los padres, los niños, el río, the fathers, the children, the river. I should have recognized what was happening, should have seen it. I'm a journalist. I'm trained to spot patterns, to connect evidence, to see the story taking shape. But I was too deep in it, too focused on the investigation, on building the episodes, on capturing the perfect audio, on proving this was more than folklore. I didn't see that I was exactly what she'd been waiting for. Divorced father, custody battle, 6-year-old son. I fit the pattern perfectly, and I'd brought myself right to her river, night after night, recording her cries, following her story, walking directly into 40 years of death without ever realizing I wasn't the hunter. I was already caught. The first time it happened was Wednesday night. I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, small ones. I checked my phone, 2:37 a.m. I'd been back in Austin for a day and a half, back in the apartment with Anthony for his week with me. The divorce decree called it parenting time. That's what we were supposed to say now. I got out of bed and walked to the hallway. Anthony's bedroom door was open. His bed was empty. I found him in the bathroom. The sink was running, full blast. He was standing on his step stool, the blue plastic one with the non-slip grip that we bought at Target when he was 3, just staring at the water pouring from the faucet. His hands were at his sides. His eyes were open. "Anthony?" He didn't answer, didn't look at me, just kept staring at the water with this blank expression I'd never seen on him before. His face looked slack, empty. I touched his shoulder. "Buddy, hey." Nothing. I turned off the faucet. The silence felt too loud. Anthony blinked twice, slow, then looked up at me with confusion spreading across his face. "Dad, you okay?" "Yeah." He rubbed his eyes. "I'm tired." "You were sleepwalking." "I was?" "Yeah, come on, back to bed." I walked him back to his room, tucked him in, sat on the edge of his bed for a few minutes, watching him fall back asleep. His breathing evened out in maybe 90 seconds. Kid could sleep anywhere, through anything. Always could. I went back to the bathroom and checked the sink. It was dry except for a few drops still clinging to the basin. I turned the faucet on, then off. Normal water pressure. Nothing unusual. Anthony had never sleepwalked before. Not once in 6 years. I figured it was stress. The divorce had been hard on him. Ellen and I tried to keep things civil around Anthony, but kids aren't stupid. He knew things were different. He knew his mom wanted to move him to Houston, and his dad wanted him to stay in Austin. He'd probably overheard more than we realized. That was it. Just stress. I went back to bed but didn't sleep much. The second time was Friday night. Same thing. I woke up around 3 a.m., heard footsteps, found Anthony's room empty. He was in the bathroom again, standing on the step stool, sink running full blast, staring at the water with those blank eyes. I turned off the faucet. Anthony. He blinked, looked at me. Dad? Sleepwalking again, buddy. Oh. He seemed more awake this time, a little scared. I had a bad dream. What about? I don't remember. I took him back to bed, sat with him until he fell asleep. This time it took longer, maybe 5 minutes. He kept shifting around, pulling the blanket up to his chin, then kicking it off. Saturday morning, I found his pajamas in the hamper. The superhero ones. Red shirt with a blue cape printed on the back, matching pants. They were damp. Not soaking, but definitely wet. The fabric felt cold when I touched it. Anthony, I called. He was in the living room watching cartoons. Why are your pajamas wet? He came to the bathroom doorway, looked at the pajamas in my hands, shrugged. I don't know. Did you spill something? No. Did you wash your hands and get water on yourself? I don't think so. You don't remember? He shook his head. His expression was hard to read, not lying exactly, just genuinely unsure. I threw the pajamas in the wash and told him to be more careful around the sink at night. The third time was Sunday. Same routine. 3 a.m. Empty bed, bathroom, running water, blank staring. I was getting annoyed by then. Sleep deprivation, probably. I'd been up late every night that week editing audio files, trying to piece together a coherent narrative structure for Kinsley, and getting woken up at 3 a.m. wasn't helping. Anthony, you've got to stop this, I said, maybe a little sharper than I should have. He blinked, looked at me, his eyes filled with tears immediately. I'm sorry, Dad. It's okay. I'm not mad, but you need to stay in bed, okay? I don't mean to. I know. Come on. I walked him back to his room. He climbed into bed and I pulled the blanket up. Dad? Yeah? I keep having bad dreams. That stopped me. What kind of bad dreams? He was quiet for a few seconds. Then, there's a sad lady. A sad lady? Yeah, she cries a lot. She's really sad. Something cold moved through my chest. I kept my voice steady. What does she look like? I don't know. I can't really see her, but I can hear her crying. What else happens in the dream? She calls my name. She says mijo and mi niño, and sometimes she says Anthony, and she sounds so sad, Dad. Like she lost something and can't find it. The cold feeling spread. Mijo, mi niño. The exact words I'd heard in the recordings. The exact words the sobbing voice had said at the river. That sounds scary, I managed. It is. I don't like it. It's just a dream, buddy. Dreams can't hurt you. I know. He didn't sound convinced. Try to get some sleep, okay? I'm right down the hall if you need me. Okay? I went back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, checked my phone. 3:22 a.m. Mijo, mi niño. I told myself it was coincidence. Kids had nightmares. Divorce was stressful. Anthony had probably picked up those Spanish words at school. Half his class was bilingual. He'd heard someone's mom or grandmother use those terms of endearment, and his brain had filed them away, and now they were surfacing in dreams, mixed with anxiety about the custody situation. That made sense. That was logical. The fact that I'd been spending weeks researching La Llorona, the weeping woman who cried for her lost children, and now my son was dreaming about a crying woman who called him my son in Spanish. That was just coincidence. The fact that I'd recorded a voice saying those exact words at the river where 7 boys had drowned, and now Anthony was hearing those words in his sleep, that was just his subconscious processing stress. The fact that every single one of those 7 boys had been the same age as Anthony, had been caught in the same kind of custody battle I was fighting right now, that was just a pattern I was projecting onto unrelated events. I didn't let myself think about the alternative, didn't let myself consider that maybe spending night after night at that river, recording that voice, researching those deaths, talking to Crystal about her grandson's bruised wrists, maybe all of that had opened something. Maybe I'd drawn attention to myself, to my situation, to my son. No, that was superstition, magical thinking. I was a journalist. I dealt in facts, in evidence, in documented reality. Ghosts weren't real. Curses weren't real. The crying I'd recorded had some rational explanation I hadn't identified yet. The temperature drops were microclimate phenomena. The bruises on Cole Lopez's wrists were probably exactly what the coroner said. Impact trauma that happened to look like finger marks. Anthony was having nightmares because his parents were divorced and fighting over him, and he was 6 years old and scared. That was it. That was the whole explanation. I had 3 weeks until the custody hearing. I had a podcast episode to finish. I had interview requests out to 2 more families and a meeting scheduled with Morgan on Tuesday to go through the 2017 coverage of Ethan Webb's drowning. The investigation was important. This story needed to be told. 7 boys had died, and nobody had connected the pattern. Nobody had asked the right questions. Nobody had pushed back against the neat, accidental drowning explanations. I was doing my job. That's all. Monday morning, I found Anthony's pajamas damp again. The dinosaur ones this time. I asked him about it while making his lunch for school. Why do your pajamas keep getting wet? He was eating cereal at the kitchen table. He shrugged without looking up. I don't know. Are you playing in the sink when you sleepwalk? Maybe. I don't remember. What do you remember? Just the sad lady. She's always crying. In your dreams? Yeah. He took another bite of cereal. In my dreams. I packed his lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, granola bar, juice box. Wrote, "Have a great day," on a napkin and tucked it in like I always did. Everything was fine. Anthony was fine. We were both fine. I dropped him off at school at 8:15 and drove straight to a coffee shop on South Lamar. Opened my laptop. Imported Sunday night's audio file into Audacity. I'd done another recording at the river before driving back to Austin. Just a quick one. 30 minutes. Same location. The crying started at 45 seconds. It was louder this time. Clearer. And there was a word I hadn't caught before, repeated 3 times between the sobs. Anthony. My son's name. In that grief-soaked voice, crystal clear in the waveform. I closed the laptop. Coincidence. Pattern recognition error. Pareidolia. The human tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data. I'd been thinking about Anthony, worrying about the custody case, and my brain was interpreting ambiguous sounds as his name. That's all it was. I ordered another coffee and told myself I believed it. I woke at 3 in the morning to nothing. That's what got me. Not footsteps this time, not the sound of water running, just silence. Complete silence. I was on my feet before I'd fully processed why that felt wrong. Anthony's room was down the hall, Door open the way I always left it. I got there in maybe 4 seconds. His bed was empty, blanket thrown back, pillow still had the indent from his head. The window was open. I never opened that window. Never. It stuck half the time and the screen was loose, and Anthony knew he wasn't supposed to touch it. But it was open now, pushed up maybe 8 inches, and cool October air was coming through. I could feel it on my face. Probably 60 degrees outside. Maybe less. Anthony? Nothing. I checked the bathroom. Empty. Checked my room even though I'd just come from there. Checked the kitchen, the living room, behind the couch where he liked to build forts sometimes. I was saying his name over and over, not loud, just steady. Anthony. 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 The front door was still locked from the inside. Chain on. Deadbolt turned. I went back to his room and looked at that window. The screen was gone. Not broken. Just gone. It was sitting on the grass outside, propped against the wall under the window, like someone had carefully removed it and set it aside. I didn't think. I just went through the window, scraped my hip on the sill going over, landed hard on the grass in bare feet, wearing the same t-shirt and boxers I'd gone to bed in. The ground was cold, wet from the sprinklers that ran at midnight in this complex. Anthony wasn't in the immediate area outside his window. No sign of him near the building. I looked left toward the parking lot, right toward the green belt that ran behind the complex. Nothing. Then I just knew. Can't explain it better than that. I knew which direction he'd gone. Knew it the same way you know which way is down. The irrigation canal was maybe a quarter mile behind the housing development, past the green belt and the dog park and the trail where I took Anthony on his bike sometimes. I started running. My feet hit pavement, then grass, then the gravel path through the green belt. Rocks dug into my soles, but I didn't slow down. Branches caught my arms. I didn't care. I just ran, following this pull I couldn't name, this certainty that had no logical source. The dog park fence blurred past. The trail curved left, and I stayed with it, breathing hard now, legs pumping. I'd run this route maybe 50 times with Anthony. I knew every turn, every dip, every place the path got narrow or where tree roots broke through the concrete. I knew this route by heart. The canal came into view maybe 30 seconds later. It ran parallel to the greenbelt, about 20 feet wide, maybe 4 feet deep this time of year. The city used it for drainage and irrigation. Concrete sides, usually pretty slow moving. Chain link fence along most of it to keep kids out. But there were gaps. There were always gaps. The moonlight hit the water and turned it black. Not dark blue or grey, black, like oil. Anthony was already in it, waist deep, maybe 20 feet from the edge, walking steadily toward the center. He was wearing his dinosaur pajamas, the green ones with the T-Rex on the front. They were soaked, hanging heavy on his small frame. His arms were at his sides. He wasn't splashing or struggling or calling for help. He was just walking, calm, purposeful, like someone had called him and he was answering. "Anthony!" I screamed it that time. Full volume. He didn't turn, didn't react at all. Just kept walking, the water up to his chest now, his chin. His face was blank, empty, the same expression he'd had standing on that step stool in the bathroom with the water running. That's when I saw her. The figure in white stood in the center of the canal, right where the water was deepest, right where Anthony was heading. She wore something long and pale, a dress maybe. It moved in the water, but wrong, flowing upstream against the current. Her arms were outstretched, reaching, waiting. I couldn't see her face. I tried. I stared right at her, but my eyes wouldn't focus. It was like looking at something through bad glass, all warped and shifting. I'd catch a glimpse of dark hair, pale skin, but then it would blur and slide away, and I couldn't hold on to any details. But I could see her hands clearly, bone white, fingers spread wide, and I could see Anthony reaching back, his small hands coming up out of the water, stretching toward her. I didn't decide to move. My body just did it. I hit the water at a full run, the cold slamming into me like a physical thing. Jesus Christ, it was freezing. Had to be 50 degrees, maybe colder. My legs went numb almost immediately, that burning cold that makes your muscles seize up. The current was stronger than it looked. Pulled at my legs, tried to drag me sideways. I pushed forward anyway, fighting it, my feet slipping on the algae-covered concrete bottom. Water up to my thighs, my waist, my chest. Anthony was maybe 10 feet ahead. The water was up to his shoulders now. Another few steps and he'd be under. The figure in white hadn't moved. Just stood there with her arms out, waiting, patient. "Anthony!" I lunged forward, got my arms around his chest, and pulled backward. He fought me. Not hard, not violently, but he struggled, trying to twist out of my grip, still reaching toward her. His hands kept stretching out, grasping at nothing. "No," he said. His voice was flat, distant. "She needs me." "No, she doesn't." I pulled harder, dragging him back toward the edge. The current pushed against us. My feet kept slipping. "You're coming with me." "She's sad. She lost her baby." My heart was slamming against my ribs. The cold water made it hard to breathe. I got one arm locked around Anthony's chest, used the other to pull us backward, one step at a time. That's when I felt it. Fingers on my forearm, ice cold, so cold it burned. The grip was impossibly strong, like being grabbed by something made of frozen iron. Not human, couldn't be human. The temperature alone would have made that impossible. I looked down, couldn't see anything. Just water. Just my arm holding Anthony. But I felt those fingers wrapping around my forearm, pressing into my skin with a grip that felt like death itself. Like being touched by something that had been dead so long it had forgotten what warmth was. The cold spread up my arm, into my shoulder, across my chest. My vision started to blur at the edges. The sound came from everywhere at once. Not through my recorder, not through headphones I wasn't wearing. Just there, filling the air around us, pressing into my ears until they rang with it. A wail. That's the only word that fits. Like every parent who ever lost a child, decided to scream at the exact same moment, and their voices layered over each other until the sound became something inhuman. Deafening doesn't cover it. The volume made my teeth ache, made my skull feel too small. Anthony stopped struggling in my arms. The figure in white, the woman, whatever she was, opened her mouth. I think that's where it came from. Her face was still wrong, still blurry and impossible to focus on, but I saw her mouth open wide. Too wide. The wailing got louder. Centuries. That's what it felt like. Not years or decades. Centuries of grief packed into one sound that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares. I'd recorded crying at the river. Clean audio on professional equipment with waveforms I could measure. This wasn't that. This was the thing that crying had been trying to become. Raw and massive, and so sad it felt like drowning in something worse than water. Anthony pressed his hands over his ears. His eyes squeezed shut. The grip on my forearm released. I didn't wait to see why. Didn't look back at the woman. Didn't do anything except lock both arms around Anthony's chest and haul us backward toward the bank with every bit of strength I had left. My legs were numb. My feet kept slipping on the algae-covered concrete. The current pushed against my hips and ribs. The screaming didn't stop. It followed us through the water, wrapping around my head, making it impossible to think about anything except that sound and how badly I needed it to end. 10 feet to the edge, then 8, then 5. My foot caught on something, a crack in the concrete or a piece of trash, and I went down on one knee. Water hit my chin. Anthony's head went under for maybe 2 seconds before I got my footing back and lifted him higher. He coughed, sputtered, didn't open his eyes. 3 feet. 2. I grabbed the chain link fence where it met the concrete edge and pulled us up onto the bank. Anthony first, Then me scrambling after him on hands and knees because my legs wouldn't hold my weight anymore. The gravel bit into my palms and kneecaps. Anthony crawled forward 3 feet, then stopped, still covering his ears, curled on his side with his knees pulled up. The wailing cut off mid-scream. Just stopped. No fade out. No echo. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. Silence felt wrong after that. Too quiet, like the world had gone deaf. I turned around. The canal stretched out empty under the moonlight, black water moving steady in its concrete channel. No woman in white, no figure with outstretched arms, no blurred face or bone-white hands, just water and the chain-link fence and the dog park beyond it. Anthony was shaking. His whole body shivered in his soaked dinosaur pajamas, teeth chattering so hard I could hear it. I picked him up. He felt tiny, way lighter than 50 pounds, and carried him back through the greenbelt. My feet were bleeding. I could feel it, but couldn't feel the pain yet. Adrenaline, probably. He buried his face against my shoulder and didn't say a word the entire walk home. 2 weeks later, I was loading boxes into a U-Haul in a King Soopers parking lot in Fort Collins, Colorado. 43 degrees outside. October 19th, mountains visible to the west, with snow on the peaks, even though it was barely fall. I'd signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex off Harmony Road 3 days prior. Paid first month last month, and deposit with money I didn't really have. Put it on a credit card. The complex had a pool that closed for winter and a playground Anthony could see from the living room window. Fort Collins population around 150,000. College town. Colorado State University. Craft breweries every other block. Bike paths. No canals behind the housing developments. No irrigation channels. I'd checked. Ellen signed the temporary custody agreement on October 12th without fighting it. That's how I knew something was really wrong. Ellen fought everything. Pickup times, holiday schedules, whose turn it was for parent-teacher conferences. But when my lawyer sent over the paperwork requesting temporary full custody, with Anthony relocating to Colorado, she signed it within 24 hours. She called me once, said Anthony needed stability, and she couldn't provide that right now with her work schedule. Said we'd revisit the arrangement in 6 months. Her voice sounded tired. Relieved, maybe. I didn't tell her what happened at the canal. Didn't mention the woman in white or the wailing or the grip on my arm that left bruises in the shape of fingers for 9 days afterward. Just said I was moving for work. New opportunities. Better for Anthony. She said, okay. That was it. Kinsley took it worse. I called her on October 14th, Tuesday afternoon. I was in my Austin apartment with half my stuff already in boxes and Anthony at school for his last week at Barton Hills Elementary. I'm cancelling the series, I said. Silence on the other end. Then, what series? La Llorona, The Drownings, all of it. More silence. I heard her keyboard in the background. She was always typing during calls, notes, emails, editing scripts for other shows she produced. The typing stopped. Calvin, we're 3 weeks into production. You've filed 4 interview requests. I've got a composer working on the intro music. We promoted this to the email list. I know. So what happened? Nothing happened. I'm done with it. Done with it. Yeah. Done with the story you spent 6 weeks researching. The one you called me about at 11 p.m. 3 weeks ago, saying it was the best lead you'd had in 2 years. I didn't answer. Kinsley's voice changed, got quieter. Less producer, more actual person concerned about someone she'd worked with for 4 years. Calvin, what happened? I can't explain it. Try. I just need to stop. The whole thing. I'm moving to Colorado in a week and I'm not finishing the podcast. Moving to what? Why? Anthony needs a change. I need a change. Does this have to do with Ellen? The custody thing? No. Maybe. I don't know. Another long silence. You're scaring me a little, Kinsley said. "I'm fine. I just can't do this story anymore." Can't or won't? Both. She didn't push after that. Told me to take care of myself. Said if I changed my mind in a month to call her. We'd figure something out. I didn't change my mind. Anthony woke up screaming on October 23rd, our 5th night in the Fort Collins apartment. I heard him from my bedroom down the hall, same layout as the Austin place, his room on the left, mine on the right, bathroom in between. The scream cut through the wall and jolted me awake at 2:47 a.m. I got to his room in maybe 4 seconds. He was sitting up in bed, blanket tangled around his legs, eyes wide open and wet with tears. Streetlight from the window lit up half his face. Hey, you're okay." I sat on the bed edge. "Bad dream?" He nodded, gulped air. His hands were shaking. "You want to tell me about it?" He shook his head. "Okay, that's okay." But he told me anyway. After a minute, voice small and hoarse from screaming. She was here. My chest went cold. Who was here? The sad lady, the one who cries. "Anthony, that was just a dream. She's not real. She said she wants to take me home." I pulled him against my side. He was warm from sleep, wearing his new Spider-Man pajamas we'd bought at Target 2 days ago. Dry this time, no wet clothes, no sleepwalking to sinks or canals. "She can't take you anywhere," I said. "You're safe, I promise." "She's really sad, Dad." "I know. She lost her baby and she can't find him." I didn't ask how he knew that. Didn't want to hear the answer. Anthony fell back asleep around 3:15, curled on his side with his hand holding onto my shirt sleeve. I stayed until 4, then went back to my room and stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off at 6:30. He woke screaming again on October 26th, October 29th, November 2nd, November 5th, always the same. The crying woman. She wanted to take him home. She'd lost something and couldn't find it. I called a child therapist. Got an appointment for November 9th. The therapist said night terrors were common in children experiencing major life changes, like divorce and relocation. Recommended a consistent bedtime routine and a nightlight. I bought 3 nightlights. Established the most consistent routine I could manage. Made sure Anthony ate dinner at 6, bath at 7, stories at 7:30, lights out at 8. He still woke up screaming about her. I didn't listen to the recordings until November 12th. They were on my laptop in a folder labeled Del Rio October, with subfolders for each night. 17 audio files total. I'd backed them up to an external drive before leaving Austin, then to cloud storage, then told myself I'd delete everything and never think about it again. But I didn't delete them. It was a Tuesday. Anthony was at his new school, Laurel Elementary, 3rd week there, still eating lunch alone most days. I was supposed to be applying for jobs, freelance writing gigs, content work, anything that paid. Instead, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and stared at the folder icon for 20 minutes. Just check, I thought. Make sure you actually recorded something. Verify it wasn't all in your head. I opened the folder, clicked the most recent file. October 9th, the night before we left Austin. The night after the canal. I hadn't been back to the river after pulling Anthony out of the water. This recording was from my apartment. I'd set up the H6 on my kitchen counter at 11 p.m. while Anthony slept, thinking I'd capture ambient noise from the street outside. Baseline audio for comparison. That's what I told myself. I put on my studio headphones, hit play. The first 90 seconds were normal. Faint traffic from the road, the refrigerator humming, my own breathing in the background. Then at 1 minute, 42 seconds, sobbing. The same crying from the river, the same wet, anguished sound that rose and fell like footsteps pacing. But closer, way closer. Not outside, not distant, inside. I adjusted the EQ, isolated the frequencies. The crying was coming from inside my apartment, maybe from the living room, maybe from the hallway. The sobbing lasted 3 minutes, got louder toward the end. At 4 minutes 16 seconds, I heard it clearly without adjusting anything. Mijo, mi niño, my son, my boy. Then at 4 minutes 30 seconds, something new. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through my apartment, getting closer to the kitchen where I'd placed the recorder. The sobbing got louder with each footstep, closer and closer, until it sounded like she was standing right next to the H6, crying directly into the microphone. The file ended at 5 minutes 12 seconds. I sat at my kitchen table in Fort Collins, Colorado, 900 miles from Del Rio, Texas, with my headphones on and my hands shaking. I opened the next file, October 10th, recorded from our hotel room in Amarillo during the drive to Colorado. Same thing, crying at 2 minutes, footsteps at 3. Closer, October 11th, recorded from a rest stop outside Raton, New Mexico, crying at 90 seconds, footsteps immediately after. Every file the same, the sobbing starting earlier, moving closer. I opened the most recent file in the folder, November 11th, last night. I hadn't recorded anything last night, hadn't touched my H6 in weeks. The recorder was packed in a box in my bedroom closet. But there was a file. Timestamp showed it was created at 2:47 a.m., the exact time Anthony woke up screaming. I almost didn't play it. My cursor hovered over the file for probably 2 minutes. I played it. 5 seconds of silence. Then crying. Not from another room this time. Not from down a hall or outside a window. From inside my walls. The sobbing came from everywhere and nowhere. Behind the drywall, under the floorboards, in the spaces between rooms where nothing should exist. She was in my house, not outside, not approaching, already here. The crying went on for 7 minutes. I listened to all of it, heard her moving through the walls, pacing inside the structure of my apartment, circling closer to where Anthony slept. At 6 minutes, 40 seconds, Anthony, his name, clear and unmistakable. She knew his name. At 7 minutes, 12 seconds. Ven conmigo, mijo. Come with me, my son. The file ended. I took off my headphones, set them on the table, looked around my kitchen, new apartment, new city, new state, 900 miles from the Rio Grande. She'd followed us, or maybe I'd brought her with us, in the recordings, in the research, in whatever attention I'd drawn by spending all those nights at the river capturing her voice. I'd thought moving would fix it, thought distance would break whatever connection had formed, thought if I just stopped the podcast and left Texas and never went back, Anthony would be safe. But I hadn't escaped. I'd only delayed it. Whatever she wanted, whatever she'd been crying for all those years in the river, she was still coming for it, and she was already inside my house, waiting.